Hello, I'm Terry Chapman, and today, as we inch towards saying goodbye to 2025, I'm going to be sharing with you some more material magic that I have been gifted with from Spirit. If you have not watched my first video featuring 7 of my material gifts, I will provide a link below in the description box so that you can easily access that video. Now, for me, material magic consists of the most extraordinary, awe-inspiring, physical items that Spirit has gifted to me or is shown to me, which seemingly come to me out of the blue since I was not expecting them. However, each gift of material magic is an energetic co-creation with Spirit, and my thoughts, my intentions, and/or my actions play an active role in the gifts given to me. So let's get started with my next 7 gifts of material magic, and I am going to begin with what my father gifted to me on his birthday in 2015. Because if you have watched my 3 recent videos celebrating my 12th anniversary photographing the light, then you are aware my journey with the light began on November 30th, 2013, which was my deceased father's birthday. While I have been photographing my life experiences since the age of 17, when I was gifted with my first camera, I believe my father's birthday was the pre-planned date to trigger the start of my soul agreement to begin photographing my experiences with non-physical beings of light. And you may wonder why the date of my father's birthday was chosen, and that is because I had a tumultuous relationship with my father. While my father was smart and funny, he was also addicted to alcohol, which has impacted my entire life, especially my childhood. While my father tried, he was never successful at sobriety for very long, and when he took his last breath on November 6th, 2010, I felt more anger and disappointment than love. I share this personal truth with you because in non-physical form, my father has shown me that our relationship did not end with his physical death, and that we could work together to heal what could not be healed while he was in physical form. So my journey photographing the light beginning on his birthday in 2013 was the most profound way that my father could get my attention. And this brings me to my first material magic gift, which my father gifted to me on his birthday in 2015. And it involves comedian and actress Ellen DeGeneres. This is a letter informing me that I had won 2 VIP tickets to attend the Ellen DeGeneres show on November 30th, 2015. This particular show was for Ellen's 5th day of her 12 days of giveaways, where Ellen gave away big prizes to each member of her audience. I had entered an online contest, and winners were chosen from eligible contest entries with odds depending on the number of entrants. Such tickets were pure gold in those days, and I won VIP tickets. The check-in time was 2:30 p.m. My father's time of death was 2:30 p.m. Parking for the show was at gate 3, and 3 is a significant number in my life, which I will be discussing more throughout this video. I invited my friend Maria to go to the Ellen show with me, and we had so much fun. We each received home goods, 2 televisions, one of them being a 55-inch big screen television, a home security system, a PlayStation, video games, gift certificates, and free subscriptions to streaming services. I donated most of my winnings to a shelter for women and their children impacted by domestic issues. By doing so, my father's material magic gave us another opportunity to help heal our relationship and simultaneously help other people dealing with their own family trauma. My second gift of material magic is a ladybug and the number 3. March 22nd, 2023 marked the 13th anniversary of my fiancé Ken transitioning back into the light. Since Ken's favorite number was 3, which often translated into Ken having to buy grocery items, greeting cards, and clothes in quantities of 3, I felt the 13th anniversary would be an especially lucky day. While some pretty magical things did happen on the actual anniversary, it rained all day, so I was not able to get outside to go birding as I had so hoped. Thus, it was actually the following day that Ken brought me his gift of material magic. On the morning of March 23rd, 2023, also known as 3/23/23, I went out birding by the LA River, and as I was taking a picture, a ladybug flew onto my camera lens. I immediately knew that Ken had sent the ladybug, and I pulled my cell phone out and I took this picture. You see, I have a long history with ladybugs, which began when I was the special events director at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. I was in the process of planning a huge event to commemorate the hospital's 100th anniversary, and a new carpet was being installed in the hospital lobby. The carpet had inlays of stars and moons and ladybugs and circles and squares, and when I was asked which inlay I would like to have as a souvenir of my work for this event, I chose a ladybug, which I still hold dear. From that day forward, I utilized the ladybug as my signature trademark for every event that I produced. And as a result, ladybugs began appearing at my events and on the window of my office, which was located on the 6th floor. And Ken filled my office and home with all types of ladybug gifts. I was well established in my career at the hospital when Ken relocated from Philadelphia to Los Angeles to become the Vice President of Communications for Children's Hospital. And we were colleagues and good friends before we ever started dating. We collaborated on events for many years, and it was some of our happiest times together because we were making a difference for so many children impacted with illness. So it was very meaningful to have the ladybug land on my camera lens on 3/23/23. When I went home and uploaded the ladybug photograph from my phone, I was giddy happy when I saw that the JPEG number was 130113. And since I consider 33 my magical number, and Ken loved the number 3, not only were there 2 3s in the number, but there were 3 1s that added up to 3. And that's how Ken showed me the magic. Now, since we're talking about Ken and his material magic, the third gift of material magic is also from Ken, and it is this papyrus birthday card insert that has 2 hummingbirds. Here's the backstory. Ken loved hummingbirds. He had multiple hummingbird feeders hanging from his apartment front porch, and he so enjoyed watching the birds come and go and suck down what he called his special sugar water mixture. In March of 2010, when Ken was dying after being diagnosed with brain cancer, I took over caring for his birds. No matter how tired I was after being at Ken's hospital bedside all day, I would stop off at his home, clean and fill the hummingbird feeders, and I repeated the routine night after night. When Ken transitioned back into the light, I gave one hummingbird feeder to each apartment tenant so that they could continue feeding the birds, and I kept one feeder for my backyard. I had been feeding the sparrows, finches, and doves in my backyard for years, but I did not have a hummingbird feeder, and I felt Ken's feeder was a sacred gift in my garden, and I anxiously awaited the first hummingbird to find the feeder. It took several days, but the first visitor was a male Allen's hummingbird. I grabbed my camera and started taking pictures of him, feeling like I was honoring Ken by focusing on this male hummingbird. I was using a Leica camera that Ken had gifted to me, and I quickly realized that a moving hummingbird was a hard subject to photograph when you do not have the right camera equipment. Every image came out blurry, but I worked all that much harder to see if I could capture one decent picture. The hours I spent alone with that Allen's hummingbird became part of my grief therapy. I credit Ken's love for his hummingbirds as the catalyst for me becoming a passionate bird photographer and an avid birder. Fast forward to August 7th, 2022, which was Ken's birthday. Although it was the 12th birthday I was celebrating without Ken, that year was a particularly difficult one since my brother Leland had transitioned back into the light the year before, and I had just celebrated his birthday the day before on August 6th. So it was back-to-back birthdays for two important loved ones in my life, and I was actually feeling quite melancholy. So I decided to start my day off by putting on a pair of hummingbird socks and taking a walk through my neighborhood to clear my head. I had been walking for about 15 minutes when I saw a beautiful Siamese cat walking in the street, and I spoke to the kitty and told it to be careful. Well, the cat responded, walked over to me, and I bent down to pet the cat. It was then that I noticed, lying in the street, was a blank piece of white paper wrapped in clear cellophane. I thought it was a piece of trash, so I went over and picked it up to dispose of it properly. But when I turned the paper over, I realized it was a gift from Ken. The piece of paper was actually a greeting card insert from a papyrus birthday card. The insert features the legend of the hummingbird, and the birthday sentiment says, "May this day be spectacular and the year ahead bring you much happiness." There was a hummingbird graphic along with a hummingbird envelope seal. Now, what are the odds of finding such an item on Ken's birthday, and one that would have so much significance? I instantly felt better picking up the trash. I wonder how many behind-the-scenes maneuvers Ken had to arrange in order for me to receive the papyrus greeting card insert. How did someone throw away an insert with the perfect sentiment, which had hummingbirds featured and was so beautifully preserved in a clear cellophane sleeve? and it warms my heart when I think of how Ken used a beautiful cat to get my attention, since I am a cat lover. Now, I just shared with you the material magic of the ladybug and hummingbirds. And now my fourth gift of material magic includes monarch butterflies and 2 mallard ducks. This December 2025, I celebrate 10 years of raising monarch butterflies. I never intentionally set out to raise monarchs and educate others about the plight of the monarch butterfly. It all began in December of 2015 when I found more than 20 monarch caterpillars munching on a milkweed plant I had growing in my front yard. I did not plant the milkweed, but instead a seed from my next door neighbor's front yard had blown into my garden, taking root and attracting butterflies. I loved seeing the butterflies sipping nectar from the blooming milkweed flowers, but I had no idea that monarch eggs had been laid on the plant. So when the 20-plus monarch caterpillars had consumed almost my entire milkweed plant, I decided to educate myself on the needs of the caterpillars. This is when I learned that monarch caterpillars only eat milkweed, and that monarchs are in dire trouble. I made it my mission to find local milkweed plants to provide enough food for the caterpillars so they could mature to the chrysalis stage. When my first monarch butterfly was born, it was a female, and she was pure magic. When she took her first flight, it was an emotional experience. And every monarch's first flight still holds that magic for me. From caterpillar to chrysalis to the majestic king of the butterfly world, the monarch's journey of complete metamorphosis is a marvel and miracle in the natural world, and embodies the process of life, shedding an old form and being reborn into a new form. So my former next-door neighbor, who had the milkweed in her garden, her name was Antonia, or Tony as she was known to me, and she transitioned back into the light on April 30th, 2017. Her husband, Mariano, had transitioned back into the light 10 years before Tony. And as Tony's health began to decline, her children moved her out of that home and placed the home up for sale. The couple who bought Tony's home, unfortunately, promptly ripped out the milkweed in the garden and removed the memorial fountain Tony had installed in the courtyard when her husband had died. Now, I learned of Tony's death from her son, Mariano Jr., who came to my home the day of her death to personally give me the news. I was so honored he did so, and we stood in my front yard to reminisce about Tony. Mariano shared with me that before Tony died, her family asked her to please find a way to give them a sign that she had made it to heaven, and Tony's prompt reply was that she would come back to them as a monarch butterfly. Mariano had no knowledge I was raising monarchs as a result of his mother's garden, and that very day I had one lone female monarch born, and she was ready to be released. So together we released that monarch to take her first flight, and we wept. The next day, Mariano came back to my home and told me that he had shared with his siblings about releasing the female monarch, and he asked me if I would release a monarch at his mother's burial ceremony on May 5th. I said I would be honored to do so, but I could only do this if a monarch was born the morning of the funeral and there was a sufficient amount of time for its wings to dry. Well, as spirit would have it, on May 5th, one lone female was born, and at the appointed time, I placed the monarch in a small mesh cage, lining the bottom of the cage with pink and white rose petals, and I drove to Forest Lawn Cemetery. To my surprise, there were hundreds of people at the burial site, and Tony's family had hired a videographer and a photographer to capture the monarch being released. I can't even express how nervous I was. When the time came, Mariano reached into the cage and removed the monarch, and the butterfly stayed on his hand. Look at the beaming smile on Mariano's face. After several moments, the monarch finally took her first flight, and there were gasps and cheers and clapping from the mourners. It was such a beautiful, sacred moment, and to have the opportunity to play a part in creating such joy and magic at a funeral cannot be conveyed in words. Each monarch I release is because of the love Tony spread through her garden, and that is the powerful ripple effect of just one person's actions. But the material magic does not end there. For 2 days after Tony's funeral, I was in my living room and I noticed out of the corner of my eye a pair of mallard ducks flying into the courtyard of Tony's former home. I immediately grabbed my camera, placed a ladder up against our common property wall, and looked over into the courtyard, and I began filming.
What you guys doing? Are you looking for your house? You are? Are you Tony and Mariano?
I believe these mallards symbolized a couple that lovingly lived their married life in that home, and they came back for a final look. They knew I would understand the symbolism, and they knew that as they flew off together, that they were on to their next adventure. Now we get to my fifth gift of material magic, which is a lightning storm. The events that unfolded from this lightning storm are beyond magical. So on October 4th, 2021, I was watching a YouTube video entitled Channeling Nikola Tesla, The Lights Will Stay On. In the beginning of the video, the host Amanda Ellis spoke of Nikola's birth, which occurred around midnight on July 10, 1856, during a fierce electrical storm. According to family legend, midway through Nikola's birth, the midwife wrung her hands and declared the lightning a bad omen. "This child will be a child of darkness," she lamented. And Tesla's mother swiftly replied, "No, he will be a child of light." Tesla was a brilliant engineer and scientist, known for designing the alternating current AC electric system, which is the predominant electrical system used across the world today. He also created the Tesla coil, which is still used in radio technology. So as I am watching the video, a lightning storm began in my community. At first, I simply could not believe it. The weather forecast had not said a word about such a storm rolling in, and such a storm is such a rare occurrence in Los Angeles. I ran outside and videotaped the lightning and immediately connected with Tesla's energy. The YouTube video also addressed Nikola's obsession with the numbers 3, 6, and 9, believing they held universal significance. Tesla is alleged to have stated, "If you only knew the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, then you would have the keys to the universe." His obsession with the numbers even translated into his hotel habits by only staying in rooms divisible by the number 3. He spent his final years at the Hotel New Yorker, residing in room 3327, where he died in 1943. Now, the day after the storm, I was out running errands, and when I stopped at a red light, the car in front of me had the license plate XX Tesla. And then, when I went to get gasoline, my bill was $31.69. And that's Tesla's material magic. My sixth gift of material magic is a Cooper's hawk feather gifted to me from my brother Leland. When I received the phone call that my brother Leland had unexpectedly died in his sleep on June 30th, 2021, I went to his home and promptly found one American crow feather laying at his front door. I instantly knew it was a sign from my brother, since he was so fond of crows, and he often wrote about them in his poetry. In fact, I wish to read you a portion of a poem he wrote in 2008 about an experience he had with a dying crow at his home, and you will understand the significance of receiving this crow feather upon my brother's death. What to do with him? What to do with me? It's a baby bird that fell from a tree. What to do? We are separated in the physical, but not in our minds. He's part of me, and I am part of him. We'll always remember each other in this moment and what it meant to each of us. Him like a bird, me like a man. Our worlds collided on this day. How could we forget? I won't. Every time I see a crow fly, I will wonder if it is him and if it is me. I am flying free with him, if only in his bird mind. I am free with him because I am still prey on the defense, hoping to fly away to somewhere else, to soar free in spirit, body, and mind. So much to learn, even if you get taught by a crow, to remember your innocence and compassion, the depths of you, the God-influenced parts. So I gave the crow feather to my brother's grandson, who was 8 years old at the time. And when I returned to my home later that day, I found one American crow feather in my yard. The next morning, I went into my backyard to feed the birds, and I found one Cooper's hawk feather laying to the right side of the Jesus bust that my brother had gifted to me for Christmas in 2015. So within 24 hours of my brother's transition back into the light, he had gifted me with 3 feathers to convey the message he was now flying free with the birds. So what makes this Cooper's hawk feather a gift of material magic? Well, on September 21st, 2023, I received a phone call that my cousin Courtney had transitioned back into the light from breast cancer, leaving behind a husband, a toddler, and 2 adolescent children. The next day, on September 22nd, 2023, I asked my brother to please give me a sign that Courtney was doing well in the light, since she did not believe her death was imminent. Leland immediately honored my request by leaving the Cooper's hawk feather in my front yard, the same bird of prey feather he left in my yard after his transition. I still marvel at being given this feather. No other species of feather would have made the same impact for me. But my brother said that receiving the hawk feather was not only the result of me asking for a sign, it was the result of many of my thoughts and actions and many heartfelt conversations with Spirit that manifested such a treasured gift. Finally, of note is the JPEG number on this image, which is 164033. And this brings me to my seventh gift of material magic, which actually encompasses many gifts from the same person. Since I opened this video with my father's material magic, I would like to conclude this video with my mother's material magic. Now, my mother, Judith, was found unconscious in her home on November 14th, 2023, and she was taken by ambulance to our local emergency center. It was well known in my family that my mother believed her guardian angel's name was Daniel, so when I was greeted at the emergency center by Officer Daniel, it felt like my mother was giving me a warm hug. I was then escorted to emergency room number 3, where my mother was being attended to by several doctors. And the donor plaque on room number 3 said, "A gift from Judith Angel." My mother peacefully passed away in the hospital 2 days later. I waited 2 days before I asked my mother to come forward and to provide me with a message through an oracle card. My mother selected my Sacred Earth Oracle deck, which was printed in 2019, and my mother drew the influence card. The card features a woman holding a white dove that has a heart within a heart, so 2 hearts, and the card reflects the colors of the rainbow. The next day, November 19th, I went to Forest Lawn Mortuary to make cremation arrangements for my mother, and I wore a black and white sweater that featured a large red heart. When the representative from Forest Lawn greeted me, the first thing I noticed was that she was wearing a gold heart necklace, so 2 hearts were represented. 10 days later, on November 29th, my cousin arrived from Indiana to spend a week with me. My cousin David is Courtney's father, the young woman that I shared with you in my 6th gift of material magic, who transitioned for breast cancer. Courtney was his eldest daughter, and she died just 2 months prior to my mother. So David and I were both in the very early stages of our grief. A few hours after David's arrival, we made a trip to the Vons supermarket down the street from my mother's home, where David was going to be staying while he was in Los Angeles, and an unforeseen rainstorm occurred, meaning, like the Nikola Tesla lightning storm, there was no report of rain in our local weather forecast. Suddenly, we found ourselves witnessing the beauty of a double rainbow in the store's parking lot. The rainbow is a profound symbol of hope, for no matter how bad the storm, there will always be a rainbow. The colors of the rainbow were featured on the oracle card, and David and I had no doubt that the 2 rainbows symbolized my mom and Courtney. 3 weeks after my mother's death, on December 10th, I hosted my mother's celebration of life party at her home, and during the party, a white dove appeared in the front yard. When the guests were told that I had not arranged for someone to release the dove in honor of my mother, everyone was truly in awe that such a perfect sign of peace and hope and comfort could appear before them. So let's review this. The oracle card deck and the oracle card that my mother chose were printed 4 years before her death. And 2 hearts, a double rainbow, and a white dove manifested in my life within 3 weeks. And what was my mother's message for me with this card? It was that we are all influencing one another, consciously and unconsciously, and in ways that can be seen and not seen. And from her vantage point now, she better understands how my journey photographing the light can not only influence others, but can infuse them with love and peace and joy and hope and comfort, and bring a new awareness of spirit and what is possible with spirit. So, thank you for watching today. Here's wishing us all a year ahead, filled with material magic, much joy, and good health. So take care until next time we meet. Bye for now.